The sound of keys turning in the lock was oddly loud in the stillness of the apartment. Anna paused on the threshold, her suitcase bumping softly against the doorframe. Something was wrong. The lights were on. The scent of freshly cooked food, rosemary, garlic, something rich and savory, drifted through the air, wrapping around her like a warning. Her heart gave a small, confused flutter. She wasn't supposed to be here, not yet. The photography conference in Moscow had wrapped early, a lucky cancellation, she'd thought. A day to rest, surprise her husband. But now, standing in the doorway of her own home, something prickled at her skin. A wrongness. She stepped in slowly, the polished wooden floors cold under her boots. Her camera bag, heavier than usual, thumped gently against her hip as she walked toward the kitchen. The voice that greeted her was unexpected, soft, amused, and devastatingly familiar. "You weren't supposed to come back until tomorrow." Anna froze. There, in the soft kitchen light, barefoot on the tiled floor, stood Lena. Her best friend. Her only friend, really, since moving to this city with Maxim. She wore one of Maxim's shirts, a pale blue Oxford, too big, sleeves rolled sloppily to the elbows. She held her phone loosely in one hand, like she'd just been recording something. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We thought we had more time," Lena said, her tone casual, cruelly so. "Max and I, we planned it all out months ago." The words dropped like stones into the silence. Anna's eyes locked on the pan on the stove, his favorite cast iron with the mushroom sauce he always asked for on Sundays. The wine glasses on the table, already half full, 2 plates. Candlelight. Behind her, she heard the soft pat of footsteps. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Maxim emerged from the hallway, shirtless, his expression unreadable. Not guilt, no, something flatter, like resignation. He said nothing. The silence between them bloomed, full of all the years, the touches, the doubts she'd buried. Anna blinked. Her voice failed her, caught somewhere between breath and shock. A tremor climbed up her spine. Lena tilted her head, examining her like a curious child watching an ant drown. "You look so tired lately," Lena said, a note of faux sympathy slipping in. "He needed more than just you. We both did." Anna didn't move. Couldn't. A dull ringing had started in her ears. Maxim still hadn't said a word. In her right hand, she still held the small photo she'd printed in Moscow, a candid shot of a couple kissing in the snow. She'd been proud of that shot. The intimacy of it, the trust. Her hand closed into a fist, the paper crumpling. The camera bag was heavy at her side, but it wasn't the weight of gear that suddenly grounded her. It was something else, something breaking and rebuilding inside her. The next morning, the apartment was silent, but Anna's mind roared. She hadn't slept. She hadn't cried either. Something colder had taken over. Her suitcase remained by the door untouched. She'd spent the night in her old work chair, knees pulled to her chest, the hum of the refrigerator marking time like a metronome. Maxim had left hours ago. No explanations, no apologies. Just a curt, "We'll talk later." Lena didn't even pretend. She walked out like she belonged to him now, in Anna's clothes, wearing her life like a new skin. Anna stared blankly at the kitchen table. One wine glass still had a smudge of lipstick, not hers. The bottle of Cabernet sat uncorked beside it, almost mocking her. Last night had shattered something sacred, and she wasn't sure how much of herself she could gather from the fragments. She reached for her camera instinctively. The act was muscle memory, a tether to sanity. Looking through the lens had always helped her see clearly. Now it was her only anchor. Instead of leaving, she wandered the apartment like a stranger, capturing images. Lena's earring on the nightstand, a hairbrush on the bathroom sink with long blonde strands still tangled in the bristles, 2 coffee mugs by the bed. Her bed. Every detail stabbed, but the truth was in the details. And Anna was a woman who noticed things others didn't. Later that afternoon, she opened Maxim's laptop. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, maybe confirmation, maybe control. But what she found was worse. A folder, poorly hidden, marked consulting files. Inside, spreadsheets, contracts, names she didn't recognize. But the more she looked, the clearer it became. Transfers, forged documents, offshore accounts. It wasn't just an affair. It was theft. Maxim had been planning this. Financially, legally, slowly slicing her out of their shared assets. The documents detailed a quiet divorce strategy drawn up months ago. He'd even drafted an affidavit claiming mental instability on her part, to argue she was unfit to make financial decisions. Her breath caught. This wasn't betrayal. This was erasure. He hadn't just wanted to leave her. He wanted to replace her, make her invisible, discredit her, and to shut the laptop carefully, as if afraid it might bite. Then she picked up her phone and opened her messages. There, buried under weeks of unread texts, was one from Lena. I know this will hurt, but it's better than pretending. And below it, accidentally attached or maybe sent out of cruelty, an audio note and a tap to play. Lena's voice filled the room, smooth and confident. If she finds out, you know what to do. We can't risk her going off again. Just make it look like stress. She has that history, remember? Anna stood frozen, nausea rising in her throat. That history, the panic attacks she had battled and beaten years ago, something she had shared in confidence, now used as ammunition. The room tilted for a moment. But she didn't fall. Instead, she took a deep breath, then picked up her camera again. She walked to the mirror, raised the lens, and clicked, not out of vanity, but evidence, documentation, resolve. And it wasn't going to collapse. She was going to build her case. Later that evening, she called Dmitri, old friend, once more a quiet, sharp-witted lawyer who had always said, if you ever need me, really need me, I'll show up. He did that same night. Anna opened the door with swollen eyes but dry cheeks. He stepped inside, took one look at her, and said, tell me everything. So she did. And when she was finished, he nodded. They thought she'd fall apart. Anna's voice was a whisper, but I won't. 2 days later, Anna sat across from Dmitri in her studio space, the morning sun casting long shadows across the wall. The room, once her creative sanctuary, now resembled a war room. Her camera gear, once used for portraits and moody landscapes, had been repurposed. On the wall, she had pinned a map of connections, photos, printouts, strings of yarn, a cliche perhaps, but necessary. She needed to see the shape of the betrayal. Dmitri leaned forward, pointing to a document they had printed the night before. This clause here, the one about mental health, it's not just unethical, it's actionable if proven malicious. If we can tie Lena's audio message to this, we're looking at defamation, maybe even fraud. Anna nodded, her fingers laced tightly around a mug of cold coffee. They weren't just planning to leave me, they were preparing to destroy me, which is why we play this quietly. Let them believe you're broken. And I hesitated. You mean I should pretend to be fragile? Not pretend, just don't correct their assumptions. That evening, she texted Maxim, let's talk. I don't want to fight anymore. Within 10 minutes, he replied. Of course, he jumped at it. He wanted to believe she was folding, that her silence meant submission. Anna stared at his message for a long moment before replying. Yes, come home, I miss you. And she didn't, but she needed to see his face, hear how he spun the lie now that she knew the full story. Before he arrived, she placed a small audio recorder beneath the couch cushion. Just in case. When he walked through the door that night, he was all smooth charm and calculated remorse. A bouquet of tulips, her favorite, in one hand like flowers could erase betrayal. I'm glad you reached out, he said softly, stepping inside. We've both made mistakes. She almost laughed at that. Anna led him to the kitchen, poured wine, not drinking it herself, and listened as he told her that things with Lena weren't serious, that he'd felt neglected and that maybe a break could help. A break, as if the woman he brought into their bed hadn't gutted their entire life. I'm not angry, Anna said carefully. I just need honesty. I want to understand what this was really about. Maxim hesitated for the briefest moment. Then he said it, the thing she needed him to say. I didn't mean for it to go so far. Lena got attached. It complicated everything. You weren't supposed to find out this way. And then he added in the same even tone, I know you've struggled before. I was worried how you'd react. There it was, the setup. Anna smiled faintly. I understand. He smiled back, relieved. He had no idea he'd just confirmed everything she needed. The audio would be enough to corroborate Lena's message. Together, they painted a clear intention to manipulate, discredit, and erase her. The next morning, Anna met Dmitri in a cafe near his office. She handed him the recorder. He said it all, calm, like he was reading a grocery list. Dmitri's smile was razor thin. Perfect. You're doing well. How do you feel? Tired, but focused. She glanced down at the folder he'd brought. Legal drafts, screenshots of financial documents, voice transcriptions. The case was taking shape. I want to hit first, Anna said, but not with lawyers, not yet. Dmitri raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? Lena records everything, voice notes, reminders. She stores them in the cloud. I noticed once when she asked me to help with her phone settings, she backs everything up automatically. You think there's more? There has to be. That afternoon, Anna visited Lena's favorite cafe. Not by accident. Lena was there, as expected, laughing too loudly with a coworker. Anna walked past without making eye contact, but she let her scarf drop near Lena's chair. When she bent down to pick it up, her fingers brushed Lena's handbag just long enough. An hour later, Anna held Lena's unlocked phone in her studio, gloves on. It had worked. Lena had never changed the screen lock from the day Anna helped her set it up. She'd guessed the passcode in 2 tries. The name of Lena's cat, the voice memos were all there. Anna scrolled past dozens of petty complaints until one caught her attention. Labeled with nothing but a date. She pressed play. Lena's voice crackled through the speaker. Max thinks I'm getting too bold, but she's so easy to manipulate, I almost feel bad. Almost. If this works, she'll be the one in a psych ward and I'll have her life. Anna didn't blink, didn't breathe. It was worse than she'd imagined. Not just an affair, not even a scheme. A full-blown erasure of her identity, her credibility, her sanity. And she had it all. Proof and temp, voice. She returned the phone later that day, slipping it back into Lena's bag where she'd found it, unnoticed. By the end of the week, she had compiled a hidden folder with audio files, financial records, screenshots, and photos. She backed it all up in 2 places. One cloud drive, one USB. Then she drafted a short email, subject line, to whom it may concern, and set it on a timer. It would send in 48 hours, unless she stopped it. Anna stared at the countdown, her finger hovering. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. The game was no longer theirs. It was hers now. Anna didn't cancel the email. She postponed it. 48 hours wasn't long enough. She wanted them in the room when the walls collapsed. So she devised something better, an invitation. Under the guise of reconciliation, she texted both Maxim and Lena separately, offering peace. "Let's meet," she wrote. "I think we owe each other honesty at least once." Maxim was predictably eager. Control always suited him. Lena was hesitant at first, but curiosity got the better of her. She agreed to come. Her vanity wouldn't let her resist the opportunity to gloat in person. Anna chose the location with care, a modern co-working studio she used occasionally for private shoots, neutral territory, minimal exits, a place she could control. Before they arrived, Anna set the stage. A tripod stood at the far end of the room, a professional camera perched on top. Nearby, her laptop sat open and quietly recording. She arranged 2 chairs across from her, facing a large monitor that displayed a paused audio waveform. Calm, deliberate, clinical. Dmitri waited in the next room, listening in via wireless earbuds. He wouldn't intervene, not unless things turned hostile. His voice had been even that morning when he reminded her, "The law is on your side now, but how you tell your story, that's powerful." At 6:04 p.m., Maxim arrived, sharply dressed, fake concern already painted across his face. At 6:09, Lena followed, perfume heavy, lipstick bold. She walked in like a woman visiting a grave she thought she'd already buried. Anna didn't stand to greet them. "Take a seat," she said simply. They did. "I know why you're here," Maxim began, leaning forward. "I just want to say," "No," Anna cut in. "You're here to listen." She clicked the keyboard, the waveform on screen sprang to life. Lena's voice echoed through the room, unmistakable. "If this works, she'll be the one in a psych ward, and I'll have her life." Lena froze. Her pupils shrank, her mouth parted, but no sound came. Maxim turned slowly to her, expression unreadable. Anna clicked again. Another recording, this time Maxim's voice, calm, detached. "Just make it look like stress. She has that history, remember?" Silence fell like a hammer. Lena stood abruptly. "You recorded us?" Anna finally smiled. "You taught me that everything worth keeping is worth backing up." Maxim's jaw tightened. "You don't understand what this looks like out of context." "Oh, I understand exactly what it looks like." She opened a folder on her laptop. "I have the context. Financial records, drafts of your power of attorney plans, the deleted messages you forgot to wipe from your shared cloud calendar. And Lena," she looked at her with calm contempt, "I have your little voice diary. Every deluded fantasy you recorded while pretending to be my friend." Lena's skin had gone ghost pale. "You can't prove," Anna tapped the camera. "I don't have to prove anything. The footage speaks for itself, and it's already been uploaded. If anything happens to me, even if I just disappear, an email goes out to the police, to journalists, to your clients, Max, to your mother." That one landed. Maxim paled. "You wouldn't," he muttered. Anna leaned forward. "Try me." Maxim stood too quickly. "What do you want, Anna? Money? A clean divorce? Some kind of revenge fantasy? Let's settle this like adults." And arose, slow and steady. "Settle?" Her voice was quiet. Lethal. You didn't just cheat, you tried to erase me. You wanted to paint me as unstable, unfit. You wanted me locked up or broken down so you could rewrite the story and come out clean. She let the silence grow heavy, then continued. But I'm still here. I didn't break, and now I'm the one writing the ending. Lena grabbed her purse. We're leaving. You are, Anna said, but not before you hear this. She played one final clip, a voicemail. Lena's voice again, raw with emotion. The only message she hadn't deleted. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I wanted her life, but he's not who I thought. I think I made a mistake. Lena's face collapsed in on itself, rage twisting her features. You set me up? Anna raised an eyebrow. No, you recorded yourself. I just listened. The two of them stormed out, no longer allies, now fractured, exposed, afraid. Dimitri entered moments later, offering a small nod. You okay? Anna nodded slowly. I think I'm finally free. Later that night, back home in her studio, she opened the draft email titled, To Whom It May Concern. She deleted it. She didn't need it anymore. She already had everything she wanted. Truth and silence. Anna stood alone in her bedroom, surrounded by a quiet that no longer suffocated. The apartment felt different now, not just emptier, lighter. The clutter was gone. Photos had been taken down, not out of pain, but out of intention. The space needed to be hers again. She walked barefoot across the floor, the wood cool under her feet. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual indifference. Inside, something far more subtle stirred. Stillness, not numbness. For the first time in weeks, she could breathe without tasting iron in the back of her throat. She opened the wardrobe slowly, her fingers trailing across the sleeves of old clothes, dresses she hadn't worn in years, jackets that still smelled faintly of Maxim's cologne. One by one, she folded them, not as an act of mourning, but as a ritual of release. In their place, she hung 3 new garments, simple, clean, unattached. In the far corner of the room sat her camera on a tripod, lens cap off, waiting like a patient witness. Anna turned toward the mirror. She stared at her reflection, the same face she'd seen for 35 years. But tonight it looked different. Not younger, not older, just returned. The lines at the corners of her eyes were deeper, but so was the clarity within them. The green had darkened, sharpened, no longer dulled by compromise. She lit the camera and pressed the shutter. Click. Then she set it down and whispered, I'm not who you tried to make me. She opened her laptop and began typing. Not legal briefs, not messages, a story, her story about the cracks we ignore, the silences that scream, the betrayal that hides behind breakfast kisses and shared bank accounts, about what it means to unravel and to choose, piece by piece, what to put back, not to heal for someone else, but to rebuild for yourself. She didn't name them. Maxim and Lena had already stolen enough from her. They wouldn't get this too. The story belonged to Anna now. The anonymity gave her power. The truth, even veiled, resonated louder than any scandal. She posted it anonymously to a popular online community for women. Then she closed the laptop, walked to the window, and opened it. The night air brushed her face. Distant laughter rose from the street below. She let it in. The next day, her story went viral. Thousands of women commented. Some whispered their own stories. Others screamed theirs. A few simply wrote, Thank you. I thought I was crazy. But Anna didn't bask in validation. She didn't refresh for numbers or praise. She took her camera outside. She began photographing strangers again, faces in cafes, mothers at bus stops, girls with messy buns and eyes that carried entire storms. No more posed portraits, just truth, unfiltered, unapologetic, and in each photo, she captured a kind of quiet rebellion, the rawness of people living in the aftermath of something. Weeks passed. One morning, Anne received a message from a small publisher. We read your story. It's powerful. Would you be open to developing it into a collection? She read it twice, then smiled. Maybe she would. That evening, she stood in front of the mirror once more. This time, she didn't flinch. She didn't study flaws. She didn't look for what had changed. She simply met her own gaze and smiled. Not the brittle smile she used to wear at parties, not the polite one from family dinners. A real smile, soft, sure. And then, without a word, she lifted her camera and took one final shot of herself, free.